Hey everyone, and welcome to This Explainer. Today, we are diving into what is arguably the most sophisticated piece of technology on the planet. Forget about the newest smartphones or supercomputers for a second. We're talking about your body's ultimate command center, the human nervous system. It's this incredibly vast, beautifully complex network that controls and coordinates literally every single function in your body. So let's get right into it.
Here's our quick roadmap for today. We're going to cover 1. The ultimate command center. 2. Neurons, the communicators. 3. Neuroglia, the unsung heroes. 4. The central nervous system. And finally, 5. The peripheral network.
All right, kicking things off with Section 1, the ultimate command center. It's truly mesmerizing when you just pause to marvel at the sheer processing power of the human body. Just think about this for a second. How does a single, invisible thought in your mind actually translate into a physical action in the real world? Like how you decide to pick up a cup of coffee, and instantly your arm reaches out, your fingers grip the handle perfectly, and you bring it up to your mouth without spilling a drop. It feels totally instantaneous to us, but there is this massive biological symphony happening behind the scenes. Think of the nervous system as this massive, full-body information highway. Starting from the brain at the very top, it shoots down the spinal cord and then completely branches out into every single corner of your limbs and organs. It conducts nerve impulses between all of your body structures, basically acting as the master coordinating system for literally everything you do. So how does it actually pull this off? Well, it all comes down to a super elegant input-process-output mechanism. First up is the sensory function. This is gathering input from both inside and outside your body. Next comes integration. This is where your brain steps in like a master computer to analyze that data, store it, figure out what it means, and then decide on a game plan. And finally, we have the motor function, which is the actual physical response. This one beautiful loop regulates absolutely all of your body's activity, from the voluntary movements you choose to make all the way to the involuntary stuff keeping you alive. Moving right along to Section 2, neurons, the communicators. Okay, let's zoom way into the microscopic level. The architecture of a single neuron, or nerve cell, is just fascinating. These guys are the frontline communicators of your body. You've got the main cell body in the center, right? And branching off of it are these short tree-like structures called dendrites. Dendrites are the receivers. They take the signals in. Then, extending away from that cell body is this long single cable called the axon. The axon conducts the message away, passing it along to the next destination. It's essentially a highly specialized biological wire built for high-speed conduction. But here's kind of a wild fact. These neurons, they don't actually physically touch each other. Not at all. Instead, they meet at a microscopic gap called a synapse. At this junction, the electrical impulse triggers the release of chemical messengers, which you've probably heard of, called neurotransmitters. These chemicals literally float across the gap to deliver the message to the next neuron in line. It's a total chain reaction. The axon of one nerve cell synapses with the dendrites or the cell body of another. But the signal doesn't just stop there. It travels all the way down the line until it reaches an effector organ, something like a muscle fiber, at a highly specialized junction called a motor end plate. And that is exactly how your brain tells your muscles to contract. Now, because they have different jobs to do, not all neurons look exactly alike. These fast-talking communicators actually come in a few structural variations, which are classified by the number of processes attached to their cell body. So you've got multipolar neurons with tons of dendrites, bipolar neurons with just two main extensions, and then unipolar or pseudo-unipolar neurons. Their different shapes and sizes are perfectly tailored for whatever specific sensory or motor function they need to perform. Which brings us to Section 3, neuroglia, the unsung heroes. You know, neurons completely get all the glory, but without glial cells, your neurons literally couldn't survive or do their jobs. They are the unsung support staff of the nervous system. In your central nervous system, you've got astrocytes forming the incredibly vital blood-brain barrier. You have microglia acting as your immune defense, sweeping through to clear out cellular debris. Ependymal cells form your cerebrospinal fluid. And then we have oligodendrocytes in the central system and Schwann cells in the peripheral system. Both of these are responsible for producing the myelin sheath. That's the fatty insulation wrapped around the axons that allows electrical signals to travel incredibly fast without short-circuiting. They really are the ultimate support team. Moving to Section 4, the central nervous system. Let's zoom back out from the cellular level to the macro level. It's super helpful to draw a clear boundary here. The nervous system is divided into two main subdivisions. First is your central nervous system, or CNS, which is your main processing unit. It's made up exclusively of the brain and the spinal cord, where the cell bodies form what we call nuclei, and the processes form tracts. Meanwhile, your peripheral nervous system, or PNS, consists of the cranial and spinal nerves and ganglia. Think of the PNS as the massive cable network that wires into that central processor, connecting the CNS to the rest of the body.
Because the brain and spinal cord are so delicate and absolutely vital, our command center is kept under incredibly heavy security. They are safely housed inside bone, the cranial cavity and the spinal column. And on top of that, they're securely wrapped in 3 protective membranes called the meninges. Starting from the tough outermost layer down to the delicate inner layer, you have the durama meter, the arachnoid mater, and the pia mater. They're essentially nature's ultimate shock absorbers.
If we take a look inside that central nervous system, you'll see the internal tissue is divided into gray matter and white matter. But what's really cool is that they are arranged completely differently depending on where you look. In a cross-section of the spinal cord, the gray matter is tucked on the inside, kind of shaped like a butterfly, with the white matter on the outside. But if you look at a section of the brain, it's totally inverted. The gray matter forms the outer cortex, while the white matter sits mostly on the inside. It's a beautiful structural shift depending on what level of the central system you're at.
And finally, Section 5, the peripheral network. Heading out into the peripheral network, let's start with a really critical number, 12. That represents the 12 pairs of cranial nerves. These are highly specialized nerves that emerge directly from the brain itself. They handle essential direct connections like the optic nerve for your vision, the vestibulocochlear nerve for hearing and balance, and the incredibly important vagus nerve, which wanders all the way down to help control your heart and digestive tracts. Now contrast that with the number 31. You have 31 pairs of spinal nerves. These emerge step by step from the segments of your spinal cord. 12 thoracic, 5 lumbar, 5 sacral, and so on. They branch out and divide into different rami to supply the skin, muscles, and bones of your entire body, constantly carrying sensory info up to the brain and motor commands back down.
So how does this vast peripheral network divide up the workload? Well, it basically has 2 main components. The somatic component deals with your conscious world, feeling pain, touch, temperature, and making voluntary muscle movements. But it also has a visceral or autonomic component. This one runs entirely in the background. It's further divided into the sympathetic and parasympathetic systems, automatically managing your internal organs, keeping your heart beating and your lungs breathing without you ever having to consciously think about it, which is definitely a good thing.
And that wraps up our structural tour. It is honestly humbling when you put it all together. Next time you just go for a walk or feel the warmth of the sun on your skin, ask yourself, how many billions of microscopic neurons and glial cells just flawlessly communicated across countless synapses to make that single, everyday experience possible? It's an absolute marvel of biology. I hope this explainer gave you a brand new appreciation for the incredible command center running inside you right now. Keep learning, keep asking questions, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.